The pandemic has forced millions to throw their regular routines out the window. Over the last 11 months, many Americans have shifted to working from home and the difficult task of keeping entertained at home. The many restraints of COVID-19 have made people appreciate the simple things, friends, family, and the small pleasures like taking a quick walk outside or enjoying a meal together. It's also made some people realize that it may be time for a change of scenery as they spend more hours inside than ever before, especially after the long and snowy winter that's gripped much of the U.S.
While there's this major storyline playing out of people leaving the cities and fleeing to suburbs, those folks will want to bring the amenities and the lifestyle that they've become accustomed to in urban neighborhoods with them. And I think they'll be a force for adding sidewalks and crosswalks, bike lanes, places to hang out, third places in their community.
That's June Williamson, an architect and an associate professor of architecture at the City College of New York. Williamson says that it's no surprise that the demand for suburban spaces rose over the last year. Many people moved into lower density areas to avoid the virus and had the incentive of low mortgage rates if they chose to buy rather than rent. This greater demand drove home prices to rise by about 9% across the board in 2020, according to online realtor site Zillow. And many of these sales included first-time homebuyers leaving the city in search of a lower price. But with them also came the desire to create pockets of urban living within suburbia.
I think there's the momentum being built to think about the different patterns of how people might structure their days and weeks. One might even begin to conceptualize and think about 15-minute suburbs where somebody might be desirous of living in a location where the kinds of activities they need to do on a routine basis, including work, could be closely located. And that might come about from disaggregating centralized workspaces and also places of study. So instead of everybody going to like the single campus or a corporate campus, there might be little satellite hubs that could be distributed around in one of the hundreds of thousands of strip centers that are scattered within metropolitan areas, for example. So you might go there and work alongside other people who live near you, but you're all working for different businesses, potentially.
Williamson says that this shift towards more efficient mixed-use developments was already in motion, and the pandemic only accelerated the trend.
On one level, you could say that this is the continuation and intensification of a fairly long overdue correction of overbuilding of retail real estate and property. The United States has more square footage in retail per capita than any other country in the world, and by seems like a significant margin. But it's still pretty painful to see these losses and vacancies at the local level.
While the bankruptcy of these businesses is a loss to the community, a reimagined development that brings people together can turn things around. What once was a vacant eyesore for months or even years can transform into a thriving hub.
One of the case studies in our book, which is a project that's been ongoing for a few years now, but could be a model for other properties that might become vacant in the future, office property, is a project called Bell Works in New Jersey. And it had at one point been a kind of corporate R&D facility all for one company. It's a quarter-mile-long building with a 5-story atrium with labs and offices on each floor. And it's been retrofitted into a complex that operates almost like a traditional Main Street. So that atrium has businesses on the ground floor now, school, a public library branch, hairdresser, a place to get food, and then dozens of smaller businesses are now occupying the upper levels, and they also are programming community and public events, and they're adding a hotel, a little boutique hotel on the roof. So you get a whole mix of uses where formerly it was pretty much just a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday workspace.
Williamson notes that these mixed-use developments do more than offer multiple services. They bring people from all walks of life together who would otherwise be separated by physical distance.
One of the things that I still find is a persistent myth or misunderstanding of suburbia in Northern America is that somehow it's all homogenous. And there actually is quite a bit of difference already in suburbs, has been for some time. And that stands to reason, given that the majority of population lives in suburban settings. And so as the population becomes more diverse by age, by ethnicity, by race, and by all kinds of other factors, you're going to find all that difference in suburbs as well. But it's not well mixed. So there's diversity, but it's very coarsely sorted. So there are sort of large pockets of homogeneity. So retrofitting, in many cases, can provide an opportunity for more mixing.
This concept can mean working in a communal space, volunteering at the community center, and shopping for this week's groceries, all within walking distance. It can also include different types of housing, from single-family to assisted living. This lifestyle mimics the energy of urban life while still reaping the benefits of suburbia. And it's not just the young moving from the city that will enjoy this change. As people age, it opens up accessibility and makes it easier if they can no longer drive. It also keeps them tied to a bustling community rather than sitting alone in a large apartment staring at a TV all day.
They might want to downsize and sort of move out of a big house and move into a different type of housing that's still close to their friends and their doctors and their continuing ed classes and exercise classes they might be used to, but bring them into a place where there are things to walk to right in the environment.
Williamson also highlights that this model for suburbia not only brings together young and old, but also people of different socioeconomic backgrounds.
There's an opportunity, on the one hand, to increase access for folks to get into the better resourced suburbs and get access to some of those resources that otherwise have been somewhat exclusionarily distributed. And on the flip side, for some of the less well-resourced suburban areas, it's an opportunity through retrofitting and new investment and remaking places that might be brownfields or otherwise vacated, a chance to increase opportunity in those less served suburban settings.
The end goal of this retrofitted suburbia is to bring people together without having to hop in a car and drive across town. It's a movement to build more communities where people can work, live, and relax together in a public setting. Part of this vision also includes more natural eco-spaces that have been vital during the pandemic. Structures like parks, walking paths, and open lounge areas push people to get outside and moving. Another effect of COVID-19 is the closure of streets to make room for outdoor dining. Williamson says that even this change may be a permanent fixture moving forward in cities and towns across the U.S. COVID-19 has changed everyday life in many ways. For one, it's opened more people's eyes to the importance of human connection. To find out more about this topic and our guest, June Williamson, visit viewpointsradio.org. Also, check out her new book, Case Studies in Retrofitting Suburbia: Urban Design Strategies for Urgent Challenges. Available online and in bookstores now. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price. Coming up on Viewpoints.
But those small businesses, in the aggregate, are 50% of all jobs and 45% of GDP. It's about half the economy.
One economist's theories on post-pandemic America. Then,
it was a life lived much closer to the bone than the more comfortable life that you encounter in the middle class in the suburbs.
Exploring the oil fields of rural North Dakota. I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of Media Tracks Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows and find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.